into our first match of the day, folks. Spawning in the top right of Oxide LE, our blue Terran player, playing for Team Liquid. This is Clem.
And his opponent in the red, in the bottom left side, he is fighting for the Jin Green Wings. Give it up for, of course, the one and only Maru.
So this is a little bit out of order in terms of our bracket, folks. So we had a potential scheduling issue with the Gold Team League that just recently had been happening as of just a couple hours ago. And we didn't want the players to accidentally get overlapped. So Cure, who was playing in the Gold Team League, is going to be playing second on today's semifinal. So you didn't miss anything. Don't worry. We're just going to be starting with Maru and Clem. And we figured, what a way to start our semifinals getting into this type of matchup, Kozan.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe the one that's more hype right here, right? Because we do still have the European versus the Korean here. It's the one that a lot of people are looking forward to. Not to kind of undersell the other two, of course, TY and Cure. It's a very hype matchup also. Cure has been showing miraculous games so far, being able to take on Rainer and being able to take on Serral, two monstrosities of the Zurich race. And we're going to see how he does against perhaps the best TvT specialist from Korea as well. So, I mean, that one also going to be incredible, I would say. And very, very interested to see how that one is going to pan out. This one, though, overall, I guess we still do have to do our own predictions as well here, Rashi.
That's what I was thinking
Overall, you know what? I would love it if Clem manages to win. I'm gonna throw out the wild card here. I'm gonna say Clem manages to take it with a 4-2, 4-3. I hope. Fingers crossed.
I mean, if you're going to call Clem winning this series and you call anything other than 4-3, I would just be stunned. Clem is an outstanding player. I want the Frenchman to be able to win some games here, but ultimately I don't think he's going to take the series. I think Maru is just too tall of an opponent to try and overcome. I think this is going to be 4-2 for Maru. I think Clem has it in him to be able to take some games. And of course, folks in the chat, we'd love to hear what your predictions are. Feel free to share. Let us know how wrong you think we are as we get into our 2-minute, 30-second mark here. Both players just kind of trading a little bit of scouting information on top of what's happening with the onset of this game. More than anything, I have a feeling that we're going to start seeing a Clem getting really aggressive as he does right here, trying to shut down Maru's normalcy in his early game, right? So now, right in this moment, being able to delay that natural expand and forcing Maru to be delayed just a little bit. I think this is where Clem will try to climb further and further into this game.
Actually, this is the exact same map. That is the exact same situation that we saw yesterday with Innovation versus Maru as well. When Maru manages to just barely in the nick of time get the kill on that SCV, which is this like not even visible bit of producing left on that command center. And I'm worried, man. Is that a sign? Is that a sign of what's to come? Maru absolutely just demolished Innovation yesterday. It was crazy. At one point, it seemed like he was behind. I thought he was going to go down for at least one game, and ultimately managed to find a comeback. And well, that is a little bit worrisome here, of course, for Clem. But actually, Clem was the person who did this right now. I'm sorry, but yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe that means Clem will be able to take it. My apologies.
I think if there's anyone that could do it, I think it could be Clem, but again, I have to stress how difficult I think this is going to be. But this is exactly what I was hoping Clem would open up with. A lot of heavy aggression, getting onto that ramp, really forcing the situation. But Maru doing the same thing back at home for Clem, getting these Hellions into the main base here. So many of these SCVs are going to fall, and unfortunately for Clem, this could have been a really good trade in his favor. He's getting a lot of great damage done here, getting on top of the production, forcing workers off the line for Maru. But Clem is losing just about as much back at home, but he's able to pick off that medevac here. Clem coming out really strong, guns a-blazing here in game number 1.
Yeah, just needs to avoid the auto turret right here. Does lose a single Marine, but still, I mean, gets out on top over here, right? 19 SCVs versus 12. And, well, overall, his army is looking a lot better as well. He's getting even more SCVs right here, coming back in on the right side. Not that much stuff remaining for Maru, especially now with this Viking here as well. The Cyclone is very low on the HP, but perhaps with a good look on from Clem after Maru looks onto perhaps a Marine or something like that, or a Reaper. Maybe this is suddenly going to become a potential victory for Clem here, as he's not letting up this aggression right now.
Oh, this is outstanding from Clem. This is exactly what he needs to try and get accomplished here if he wants to stay in this. Those tanks are going to go completely uncontested, and GG is called. Clem taking a very quick game number 1 and showing us exactly how he has to play this game if he wants to win. Exactly the way he's got to shape that up, Kozan. It's going to be that aggression. Maru is going to thrive as the game goes later and later, and I don't think Maru quite expected Clem to come out swinging that hard.
Yeah, definitely caught off guard a little bit, right? This is the potential that could happen with the TvT. If you're just opening a little bit too greedy and you start snowballing, the snowball can happen very, very quickly. Suddenly there's a siege tank in front of your base, and if your siege tank isn't in a good position preemptively for that event, then all of a sudden this is what happens, and that's exactly what happened this time around as well. Maru trying to get that siege tank just barely on the ramp inside of range of the other siege tanks, outside of vision overall, but ultimately, yeah, there was already vision up there for Clem with the flying units. Was able to take it down before it even started to siege up, pretty much.
Yeah, it definitely caught Maru off guard, and you can even kind of see it on his face right now, where he's like, "Okay, all right. I think maybe I underestimated this kid a little bit. We need to actually start playing the game a little bit tighter here, and I think we will start to see him stay even that much more aggressive against his opponent. But I think map choice is going to be an interesting component of this as well, because this is a best of 7. There are no map bans, so every map is available in play here. We'll have to see where things go for game number 2.
Yeah, Oakside is one of the smaller maps, I suppose, but overall the map pool is a lot smaller this time around, right? There's not that many big maps anymore. There was, of course, Ice and Chrome. That used to be a big part of the ladder. Right now, we don't really have those maps anymore at this moment. So we'll have to wait and see if that is going to benefit the player that gets more aggressive here, or perhaps if the player that gets too aggressive is going to get counterattacked a little bit easier and a little bit earlier on than they would expect.
Well, we are going to be getting into our next map. It's going to be on Light Shade. Will we see Clem jump in on top of Maru here in game number 2 and try and get some of those tight timings? Or are we going to see Maru maybe pull out some of his shenanigans? I could see... Oh, okay. Now speculate with me here, Kozan. Are we going to start seeing Maru get into his old ways of a proxy barracksing? Could that be on the table?
It could definitely be on the table, but it is such a gamble, right? So I'm not quite sure if he would be willing to do something like that versus Clem, because in the TvT matchup, overall, if you do go for the proxy Rex and your opponent opens up with the double gas or something like that, if it gets scouted, anything of that sort, you're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna be in trouble, and I don't think Clem is unaware that is a possibility, right? So we'll have to wait and see. But honestly, I think Maru, he may just be thinking to himself, all right, well, I just kind of lost those units at the start of the map a little bit too early. It didn't get the damage done across the fields that I wanted to. Let me just try to do that a little bit better. Let me get into the groove of the macro game and see what happens game number 2.
Well, let's go ahead and find out here. We're going to jump on into Light Shade, spawning in the bottom right. Our blue Terran player playing for France and Team Liquid. This is Clem.
And the other tiny player right here in the red, he's the Korean from Jin Green Wings. He is, of course, Maru.
Okay, so nothing outstanding just yet. I am getting double audio somewhere. Where is my double audio coming from? Oh, that's why. Okay, I figured it out. I've got a lot.
Dream twice.
Well, it wasn't even the. So it was weird because it was my playlist for our auto lobby, but it was the exact same song, just at a different point. Okay, I figured it out. We're all good now, so no anxiety being brought in for the rest of this. But here we see a Maru who's going to play a little bit safer here in game number 2, going for that double gas, Kozan.
Yeah, and Clem so far looks like he will be going for that command center. So very early on a double gas, by the way, as well. So, I mean, overall, it could still turn into a little bit of aggression, and that could benefit him quite a bit if Clem does decide to go for that quick command center, which it looks like he will, seeing those minerals stack up right now. And it's going to come down to how quickly Maru takes these SCVs off the gas, right? If he takes them off, that means he still wants to go for an expansion himself. If he keeps them on there, he's looking to do a little bit of aggression. Keeps his supply depot open, so he's not too afraid, it looks like, to get scouted here. Perhaps even hoping that he may be able to catch that that little SCV right there, like an insect-eating plant or something. But yeah, overall is going to take those SCVs off the gas, so it looks like Maru wants to just kind of play the macro game here. Also, instead of the early micro game, it's going to go for a slightly later command center.
That leads me to believe that he's wanting to try to get aggressive, and we'll have to see if that actually ends up being the case here. We'll have a nice little exchange. Clem actually getting the better end of that trade, being able to get the SCV early, but unfortunately Clem's going to get zoned out as well. So fair trade on both sides. Unfortunately, though, that's going to leave this natural wide open. So now Clem has to try and figure out how to mitigate this damage. He's already down 2 workers, and Maru turning around and getting that kind of aggression out onto Clem. A little bit of payback, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, getting that SCV, 2 SCVs right there, it's always nice. Clem will be able to make up for that with this command center dealing a lot earlier. Gets that SCV out of there as well, safely into the command center. Little nice micro thing. He's not even too worried to start up that next SCV because his Hellions will be popping out sooner rather than later. And yeah, should have the composition advantage right here, right? With the 2 Hellions a little bit quicker than the Reapers, so some more HP overall. He's going to be able to chase Maru away from this location, and you know what, overall set himself up for a pretty good spot here, I would say. Oh, going for the Marauder concussive shell, by the way, that is an interesting one.
See, I like
seeing a bit of aggression.
Yeah, I like this a lot from Maru. We talked about how Clem was going to have to, or excuse me, I like this for Clem. Sorry, I said the wrong name.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how Clem was going to have to stay aggressive, and he's going to have to dig deep into his pockets to try and pull out as many different builds as he possibly can. So now here, game number 2, Clem is going to shift gears. He's going to keep the same type of pressure on, but now he's going to hit his opponent with something a little bit different in the sense that, okay, more than likely my opponent's going to have a few more tanks. He's going to be holed up at home just a little bit faster, so I need something to mitigate that damage, and Concussive Shell Marauders is going to be a good response for that, and he's going to get across the map unscouted. Kozan, Clem is going to be in a great position here.
He is coming across. That siege tank is about to be ready, though. If that gets in a good position, that could still be a bit of trouble, especially if the Marauders don't get themselves right on top of it immediately. The Cyclone helps out a ton here as well. Let's see if the Marauders will be able to take out the siege tank. I like the positioning of the Marauders overall, but my dear lord, that siege tank is getting a lot of value right now. SCV's also helping out a ton, and Maru's not sitting still. He is getting it. Okay, it's just a single Hellion here, but I mean, getting those 3 workers also not too bad, right? Getting a little bit of retaliation immediately already done. So, I mean, Clem here, you saw him shake his head there a little bit. That wasn't the damage he was looking for, right? That was really quite the investment into an early attack. And now he's going to be behind on siege tank count. He's going to be behind on the overall air army. Could get a little bit rough in the oncoming couple of moments if Maru does decide to start pressuring the front door of Clem somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was unfortunate targeting by Clem. It felt like a couple of his Marauders actually ended up going after the Cyclone rather than the tank. So the DPS that he was looking for did not secure for him, and that's going to allow Maru to be able to get some damage across the map as well, jumping right on top of that Raven. Raven's not going to be under fire at all. Should be able to pick this off, though. That's actually a good little pickup for Clem, but Maru's going to be able to keep Clem pinned on his side of the map. He's got a third base on the way as well, moving out with his own army, going to try and find his own damage.
Yeah, that was quite smart, actually, having that little cyclone there instead of inside the base trying to hunt down the flying medevac or something like that, being outside of the base. So whenever something tries to retreat out of the base, he's immediately pretty much primed to start picking it off. Takes a bit of courage, of course, because you have the potential to not have enough at home, but yeah, managed to make it work, gets rid of that first Viking here and equalizes the air dominance slightly. Now we are seeing Maru attempting a bit of an aggression, but moving back immediately after seeing that there's already a siege tank set up for Clem. He doesn't have any medevacs either, right? Decided to go for the Ravens, a couple more Vikings, so it's not going to be able to pressure the main base either from that third base location. Neither, right? Because yeah, just doesn't have the capabilities to transfer himself into the main base.
Oh, look at that Marine duel. I think I heard that song from Hamilton the musical. 1, 2, 3. Okay. But we're getting a stim pack difference here between these two players. Clem's going to have his stim a lot faster than his opponent, and he's going to try and time it out right now. What's Maru got back at home here? He does have a couple of tanks and will be able to get siege to... Oh, he's actually got more than a couple. He's got 2 on the high ground, 2 on the low ground. He's in an okay spot. So Clem going to try and rotate around to see if he can get a better engagement against this tank count. But right now, trying to find where that window is, and this seems to be the window that he's looking for. Tanks are currently unsieged for Maru, so that forward tank is going to get shut down and put into its place, but now Maru's going to be forced to try and reposition here. I love this tank spread out of Clem, as those Vikings going to get on top of those Ravens. One of the Ravens does fall. There's no Viking count right now for Maru, at least not in this position. Okay, there his Vikings come into play now. I don't know where they were hanging out, but now the advantage should be in his favor. Good interference matrix going down on one Viking, but the Raven is going to fall, and now suddenly evened up on Viking count. Clem continuing to siege away on that third base. That base is going to have to lift at some point, but the repair is okay for now.
Yeah, getting that Raven pick was absolutely massive. We saw yesterday as well, Maru it's his main unit, right? Being able to make use of those Ravens absolutely fantastically, getting those interference matrices and such. Time and time again, is going to go for the auto turrets this time around. Will attempt to clean this up. Looks like he will. Not losing that many SCVs either. Maybe a potential target fire on top of some of those SCVs would have been quite gruesome. But ultimately, Clem decides to let it go. Try to just focus back on home again, bulk up a bit more. But overall, that was some nice maneuvering there for Maru, and being able to kind of well, keep Maru from mining as much.
So where is the transition point here? Clem's now able to get out to his third base. He's got that fully secured with the gas already in position. And now we're starting to see that transition into Armory, getting that 1-1 where Maru actually is already ahead in that regard. He's already got his 1-1, getting that combat shield as well. So Clem's at a bit of a disadvantage in terms of upgrades, trying to jump on top of that stim pack timing to get an advantage over Maru, not really finding it, and Maru's actually going to get to his fourth base as well along with this push. Clem could be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, it's suddenly a role reversal here is being played out, and there's not that many Vikings or Ravens for either of these plays. It's coming down to mainly the siege tank positioning right now, and Maru actually also making a bold move, getting all those Marines into the main base. Not much back at home for Clem to defend. This could be quite a gruesome fight here. Clem needs to get as much as possible into the main base right now to start defending against this. Okay, loses a couple of those reactors, and that's about it, but ultimately that slows down his production overall, and that could bring Maru a little bit further in the lead, of course. Decides to go back to his siege tanks, and here we go. Okay, those siege tanks from Clem a little bit early on the siege, I believe, but I'm not quite sure. Okay, do manage to still target those siege tanks. That is massive, but not all of them. So I feel like he loses a lot more SCVs than he perhaps needed to if he kept those siege tanks just a bit more further forwards and managed to get those connections there. But ultimately, I mean, he cleans it up. Will he now be able to use this tank advantage to get himself into a similar position as Maru put himself? But then, of course, across the map again.
I'm very concerned about Clem's positioning right now. He really could not afford to not only lose the 2 reactors, but all of those workers, totaling 27 in this game so far. Clem's going to fall behind if he's, well, I mean, he's already kind of falling behind here. He's down 20 workers and down an army supply. And Maru knows that Clem is in a position where he has to try and get across the map. So keeping a good scout up on that top side, trying to scan forward, seeing that 4th base going down. Maru's going to keep the pressure on here and force Clem into having to defend back at home. This is going to allow Maru to be able to continue getting that SCV count up at his 4th base. He's grabbing those extra units here, going to just mass up more army back at home. And I would not be surprised to see Maru start shoving across the map here rather soon, especially given he's in a wonderful position. He's taken a lot less damage than his opponent.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, he's gonna get a little bit of an upgrade advantage here as well. Would like to see the +3/+3 immediately starting off, but actually just as his +2/+2 finishes up, look at how nice this timing works out for him. Takes a little bit of a fight, only picks up the siege tanks, but gets out of there as well. Probably just didn't quite have enough marine numbers to make that work, but my dear lord, that was a clutch window of opportunity. I'm not 100% certain if that was meant to go that way, if Maru planned it out to immediately go as that +2/+2 finished off, but I mean, it's definitely a possibility. And then, of course, that opportunity kind of presented itself also, so. And okay, well, Clem also still on the +3/+3 right here. We'll be able to get that sorted. Maru, though, with that army advantage.
Yeah, to call that an advantage is maybe an understatement here, as he's moving across with almost 20 extra supply in Marines. I feel like the tank count is relatively similar. Clem does need to get sieged up here. He's going to stem right on forward, and all of those Marines just going to go right into the wood chipper of tanks of Maru. Clem unable to balance this out efficiently, and all of the tanks of Maru will get completely untouched. Those are just going to rotate forward here. That 3rd base orbital is going to be under siege. Unfortunately, repair is not going to be strong enough to hold this back, and now we're suddenly seeing a position that has to be evacuated. Clem, unfortunately, unable to hold here, and Maru with a clean game number 2 here, evens up the series 1-1. Well played.
Very well played. Yeah, a lot of it came down to just the overall continued aggression right there, the continued being able to pressure Clem, and you know what, it wasn't looking all too horrible for Clem a couple of times there, but ultimately, you know what, Maru does Maru things. There's a saying that goes, right? If you're tied up in overall the situation in a game with Maru, that means that Maru is ahead. If you're a little bit behind, that means it's a tight situation. And I don't know, it kind of felt like that in a nutshell, that match right there, where Maru, even though they were kind of equaled out, he was just so much better with where he was putting the aggression, where he was placing those siege tanks. Even with Clem, you know, you gotta give props when props are due. Clem being able to get himself across the field there as well, put a lot of aggression onto that 3rd, but the cleanup was just so much nicer for Maru as it was for Clem.
It feels as if the aggression at the beginning was something that Clem was really banking on getting more damage done than it did. It wasn't by any stretch an all-in, but he needed to get more accomplished, and it felt as if he was a little flustered by that, where, okay, this didn't exactly work the way I hoped. I was expecting this to go a different way. And now, wait a minute, what's my build? And then, oh, suddenly, shoot, Maru's pushing across the map with his own force, and I'm in a bit of trouble. So,
yep,
we'll have to see if Clem's got something dialed up here for game number 3. I really like this quick thinking of our Frenchman here, because I cannot stress that I think that is exactly what's going to push him up over the top over his opponent. But we are going to be going right on to Lightshade for map number 3. Why don't you introduce our blue player?
All right, it's the Frenchman. He's fighting for Team Liquid. He's in the blue. He's the Terran player. Surprise, surprise. Gonna hit out a lot today. Anyway, he's Clem.
And spawning in the bottom right, his opponent, currently tied 1-1, playing for Jin Air Green Wings, the Korean Terran, Maru.
Right. I mean, Clem, will he be able to keep it up in that macro game? That's the big question on my mind. In a way, Clem, his macro skills, they are comparable to Innovation, but we saw Innovation also just getting out-positioned continuously. He had a big advantage in the overall macro game yesterday, which was game 3. I was actually on Def Aura also, and I thought he was going to be able to take it. I pretty much already called it a little bit here and there because he had such a big siege tank count. And in comparison to Maru just continues to keep the placement of his units so incredibly perfect that it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Innovation had to keep pushing into those siege tank lines with inefficient trading, and ultimately Maru suddenly tied it up again, right? Took very efficient trades, and that's the terrifying thing of this kid. He's been able to play StarCraft 2 for such a long time. He is a magician when it comes to just overall placements and taking fights like those.
I like how you use the word magician, because it does seem as if in some of these engagements he can make magic happen. He can pull the rabbit out of the hat. He can all of a sudden say, "Hey, you know what beats 30 army supply? 20 army supply when I micro it," and showing us some really, really cool engagements. And that's not anything new for Maru in any case. I would love to see Clem start to pull into his bag of tricks as well to come up with something new and interesting to throw at his opponent. And we're going to have to keep an eye on that production tab, because I do feel confident with knowing that, okay, I have Maru in the round of 4. In the round of 4, I was right. I can prepare for that. I wouldn't have been surprised if Clem just wrote down a list. All right, here are all the specific build orders that I want to do in this series, and we can just run right through them. And more than likely, we are going to get more of that as well. Both players getting out to their second base, though, so a little less, at least initial aggression by both of our players in this game number 3, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind as well, of course, Clem did try to do that early aggression with the Hellions and the Marauder push, right? That didn't work out, kind of put him back on the back foot regarding the overall supply that he would have available for the later on push. If he hadn't done that attack, not get that much value out of it, he would have been able to set up a lot more heavily onto that third base, and probably would have been a more dangerous trade overall for Maru. But ultimately, that is kind of what I'm hoping for. Neither of these players going for anything too cheeky in the start of the game, and let them go at it head to head in a straight up fight here. Ooh, careful of those Wither Mines.
I actually like what he's doing there, because he's just trying to test to see exactly where that mine is and if he could potentially sneak past it. So now he's going to take one of his Reapers and sacrifice it. He takes a little bit of a matchup disadvantage just in terms of unit count, but now he's able to be aggressive on the front side of this base. But he has to be careful. One of those Reapers already dangerously low, and those Hellions are not able to line up exactly the way he wants them to. But a lot of damage coming down onto Maru's units here. Clem being very efficient.
My God, the micro of Clem here really shining through. He manages to get so much value here. The Cyclone does put a stop to it all, though, ultimately. But Clem, he definitely showed Maru there. He put him on the back foot micro-wise. Very impressive. And you can even see Maru there laughing a little bit to himself, perhaps being like, what was that? What was that little Frenchman suddenly doing? Is he really this good with his micro? Interesting.
And I love watching the people who talk about online events. It's like, oh, it just completely destroys the micro of these players. Well, I present to you Exhibit A, where that was actually a really cool back and forth between these two players, and hopefully we get a lot of that today. Now, Clem is going to be able to get up here and scout a little bit. He does see that third CC on the way for Maru, so that should be comforting knowing that he's doing his own back at home. And right now, production tabs are almost mirrored. Both players just trying to position themselves into a 3-base economy and move their game forward.
Yep. Third base on the low ground for Clem, and it's a little bit earlier, so it's gonna help him out slightly, right? Maybe able to squeeze out an extra Raven on a tank, or just a couple more Marines, stuff like this later on. Slight advantages like this could mean a game changer, of course. Things trade very quickly in TvT. If you have like one more interference matrix, shut down one extra tank, or just be able to have that one extra tank shooting away at the Marines, you could change the outcome of a battle very quickly here. So overall, that was a cute maneuver there, sending the SCV into the command center and then immediately out of the command center, being like, all right, I'll save you, but you better get back to work immediately again.
Here is your government-issued break. 2 seconds later. All right, get back to work for another hour. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So, Clem getting himself that third base already on site. Maru's going to be floating his on once that orbital is completed. So, Clem will have the briefest of economic advantage here in this situation, but it seems like we are going to be gearing up for one of our first engagements of the series here so far. Series? Game. That one. As both players are pretty even on Worker. Yeah, game number 3. This is going to be the first engagement. Good one. All right, 42-36 Army Supply. Clem actually a little bit on the advantage here, trying to zone his opponent and do a little bit of scouting here with these Hellions to make sure he knows when Maru is going to move out, but already in a pretty nice position.
Yeah, overall, I mean, it's not too far apart still, right? It is like the slightest of advantages here for Clem. The stim packs are about equal, the upgrades going up equally, and it's once again coming down to the positioning for these players. How well are they able to allocate their forces? How are they going to be able to get themselves close by to some valuable infrastructure to deny mining, to get a reactor or a refinery, sorry, or anything like that? It's what it comes down to, and of course how much value you're going to get out of those Ravens here. Also, something we've seen that is very, very important after seeing yesterday in particular.
So now we come down to that numbers game that we talked about earlier, Kozan. The tank count is even. It's not quite officially even though, because one of Clem's tanks still out across the map, so it is 5 against 6. That defender's advantage really coming in handy for Maru right now, as it does try to shut down his opponent, who is posturing as much as he can. He's got a good sensor tower read though on that whole lane, making it difficult for Clem to try and push in here. And Maru is just playing very patiently, knows he doesn't need to overextend right now. He just needs to make sure that he stays postured with his opponent, and he can just rotate back and forward as long as Clem wants to do it.
Yeah, I like that he's being, like you said, patient, especially with some of these siege tanks right there on the right side. Doesn't unsiege everything, then sieges up again, but at the same time, it looks like Clem will be able to find some damage here because of that. The over-relaxed siege tank siege right there, suddenly being spotted out, and those Ravens coming in for quite the punishment. A very nice play from Clem there. Very much worth it.
Yeah, making the most of the little that he was able to get in that. So trading off some energy for some tanks, that's a pretty good trade, all things considered. The advantage for those upgrades is about the same still right now. Still 2-2 on the way, and actually Clem does get his started a little bit quicker. Maru might be getting himself in position. He forgot his combat shield.
Oh.
That's Mapu pointing that out for us. And yeah, that tech lab is no longer available for the barracks. So that is, I don't know if that's an oversight or if that's a calculation here, but that seems like a horrible choice.
Yeah, that is an oversight. There's no way. Well, there's still a barracks with a tech lab at the natural base, so we'll be able to start it up as soon as he sees that this is the case. But sometimes you just don't pay attention to it that much, right? Those Marines, they look a little bit different, but ultimately, once you're kind of looking more so at the grand scheme of things, at the bigger picture, you don't really look at Marines individually anymore, right? You're just kind of like, all right, well, this ball goes this way, this ball goes that way, done. That's it. That's like all you do watching these Marines. And Well, okay, there he goes. Okay, he noticed. Oh, thank the Lord.
I mean, this is still going to be a rough situation, though. If Maru's paying attention, he should be looking at those Marines going, wait a minute, you're missing a very key upgrade right now, and he could try and force the issue and have a pretty decent advantage, but it seems like right now Maru's just not going to take advantage of that fact. He is just going to try and get some good scouting done with this Cyclone. Does pick off a couple of those workers, which is a nice little exchange. He does have one bio ball moving here on the left-hand side, but this is just only really going to be for light harassment, not going to be anything major. So for the most part, Clem is going to...
Clem was not responding to this at all. He's still moving across the field here, and now this command center suddenly in a lot of trouble. Those Marines get in a marvelous position, even being able to pick off a lot of the Raven, if not just their energy. 5 workers do go down. Ultimately, you know what, gets out of there with only a few of those Marines, but you know, trading the Marine for the Raven, I don't think that's too horrendous.
Yeah,
it's an all right little move.
I guess I was glancing at the mini-map thinking like, oh, he's got a couple of tanks at that third base. That's not a big deal, but no, just nothing at home. So does have to rotate back eventually. What I was going to finish saying, though, before my brain kind of went, wait, what's happening here, is that it seems like Clem is going to go rather unpunished for his late combat shield, whether by design or otherwise. And it's now going to be Maru trying to push off more bases here with these Marines. That command center should be able to get out, but very, very low. He's going to have to repair that, but it will buy enough time for the rest of the army to come here and deflect this push. But here comes another engagement on the left-hand side.
Okay, we'll be able to clean up that command center in production. Oh, that cancel right there. Getting a lot of these Vikings also, again, with the trading for Maru, being able to put the aggression onto Clem without investing too much, right? These Marines, they don't matter. They're the cannon fodder. If you're able to take out Vikings, if you're able to take out Ravens with these types of things, slow down in the economy, kill off a command center, that is a very worthy trade. Now, overall, though, the resources lost tab still in Clem's favor, and he made some pretty good moves himself as well. So he has some maneuverability, and of course it is TvT, like one overstep, one nice position, and suddenly things could be over. It is a matchup where comebacks are very common to see, but it's always on a knife's edge. It's just moves like this from Maru, very cool to see, being able to squeeze himself into the vulnerable parts there for Clem.
Well, I do like the fact that we are getting a traditional TvT here going into the late game. We're only at 13 minutes, so not terribly deep into this game, but it's nice to see these players starting to duke it out here and pay each other just a little bit of respect by getting a normal macro game underway. We did get Corvid Reactor researched for, I believe it was Maru. I saw red there that those Ravens are going to have a little extra energy to play with here. But the tanks are not quite sieged up, and this is going to be a weird exchange. A couple of interference matrices going down on tanks is going to clean out the front line of Clem. But look at that army count here, 113 to 99. Clem at least trying to trade as efficiently as possible. Maru has to back up.
Yeah, it looks like the air dominance went to Clem heavily enough that he will be able to force Maru backwards. Nice anti-armor missile from both those players as well. A big difference we're seeing here, though, is, of course, Maru once again going for the Ravens and hold up that thought. Actually, okay, not too much being picked off right there. But yeah, so Maru going for the Ravens and Clem more so opting for the Liberators here. The Liberator, a great tool to try and harass like this. Unfortunately, there were a couple of Marines there already prepared to take it down. But yeah, a great tool for harassment and a great tool to take out those siege tanks. The Ravens, a bit more straightforward, perhaps, with the, well, less straightforward, I should say, actually, with the way you can take out those Liberators. You want to, and the siege tanks, of course. You want to use those auto turrets, you want to use the interference matrix. You got to find the best use, and we know that Maru definitely knows how to make use of those.
Okay, here comes a nice little posture by both of our players, and we start to see Maru wanting to secure that 3 o'clock base on the map. And Clem is still back pretty far with those tanks. He's going to have to start rotating forward here, but I think Maru is going to have a slightly better position here. He's going to be able to get a really nice tank concave and spread his units out. That's going to make it a lot more difficult for Clem to try and engage in here. It's hard to count those units, but thankfully we got that units tab up. The tank counts are favored in Maru, but the Viking count, Clem, trying to own that airspace. He just has to find a way to make the most of it.
Yeah, this is what Maru does, though. He goes on these weird flanks with those Ravens, and then suddenly your entire siege tank lineup is just nowhere to be found anymore. Within the fight, it won't do anything. And you know what? Actually, Maru going for the offensive here will try to get himself a base kill. That planetary in a lot of trouble. It's getting repaired, but not enough, it looks like. Just get taken out immediately. Clem trying to retaliate here. The Vikings with the Liberators pushing forwards. But some lonely missile turret right there, making that rather difficult still. And the base still stands for Maru for now.
10 Ravens, Kozan. 10 Ravens are on the map for Maru right now. And we saw how well he was able to use those against Innovation in the previous round. And right now he's going to do the exact same thing, pulling out every single ability in the back pocket of that Raven ball, getting the anti-armor missile out, getting those turrets down, using those interference matrices on all of these units, and Maru is able to clean out the tank line here and starts pushing Clem even further back here. He's already taken out one base, and now he's got his eyes set on the second.
Yeah, this is a fantastic engagement right there by Maru. Clem has to reconsider his options. This overall Liberator army, I don't think it's going to do all too well versus the Ravens, and he needs to talk down the Ravens with those Vikings. He does manage to pick up a base here also, but Maru already in a position to stop this from this aggression from moving any further forwards. The Marines in a good position to hold those Vikings back. But yeah, I mean, Clem, he needs to stay on his toes here, right? He needs to find those Ravens. He needs to keep tabs on where they're going. And the superior Viking force, perhaps with the Liberators also, he will be able to zone those out of the location. We'll be able to keep those at an arm's length, but he needs to keep that going into his favor in that way, like so. And doing an okay job right there, but we know Maru, he is always looking. He's always looking to try and get a sneaky little flank going.
Imagine not having a powerful computer for a TvT, because these scans have just got to be so much for Mapu to try and deal with as they're just constantly coming down. But this is a nice big engagement here. Big stem forward by both armies. The tanks of Maru will be able to get sieged up. More interference matrices going down for Clem. Clem having a difficult time really getting his tank line to be effective because he's constantly having to deal with frontline tanks not being effective. But fortunately, those Liberators will be able to shove tanks off, at least for now. Clem is having a difficult time trying to keep his opponent at bay. Maru manages to find really good positions to engage into, and it's taking lots of damage before he's able to push him back.
Look at this. He's just like, oh, I lost that fight. Okay, well, I'll just go to this location. No worries. We'll try somewhere else. It's okay. He did lose quite a few of his Ravens, right? There's only 3 of them left, and his air dominance is getting a little bit intimidating now for Clem, because he will be able to pick off even more of those Ravens. I don't think there's a single one left anymore here. And those siege tanks on their own are not going to do all that well versus the Liberators, who do have that extended range upgraded as well.
Now look at the army count here. Clem is going down to a slightly lower worker count, and I think he wants to have that army advantage here as he moves forward, 128 to 117. And now he is going to try and pressure this base out, but one tank going to get sieged, a couple there actually as well. So Maru will be able to secure that at least for the time being. But you're right, these players are just kind of rotating through bases. Look at the resources lost. It's almost dead even despite the unit count being very skewed. How cool is that?
That is incredibly cool indeed. I'm a little bit worried if this does go a lot longer here. It looks like Maru is a little bit easier with the bases, right? It's a bit more set up overall than Clem is. Clem trailing behind slightly on that department, but again here, losing another base, right? And when just not seeing Clem retaliate on the other side of the field, he's just kind of running after Maru's army here, and Maru being able to utilize that army to still get that damage done. Now, Maru needs to be careful, though. If he loses too much of those valuable units, suddenly Clem will be in a position where he's going to be able to push across the field, and Maru won't have anything to stop him with anymore. Although, you know what, that's a lot of Ravens.
Yeah, I was going to say, the Raven energy is still rather strong. Now, a couple of Liberators could have something to say about that, but I think Maru's going to be a little bit too careful with that ball of Ravens. He knows that that is what kind of holds the glue of his army together right now. This is a giant stim forward. Tanks were already set to go, but the anti-armor missile is very, very strong, coats the entire bio, and Clem has to back up. He cannot afford to fight with this army because it's all so weak right now.
It just seems like it's the better army composition, right? He manages to do this without pretty much any siege tanks himself either, because he just has a lot more Marines. And the siege tanks from Clem, they don't have a single say in the matter. They just get interfered with, and they can't get a single shot off. So ultimately, it just looks like Maru, his army, is still capable of just kind of bullying Clem in a sense, right? Clem now finally taking quite a beating there. Again, those siege tanks just like that, and they're going down. It's a planetary fortress here, but those siege tanks will not be able to defend it. It's gonna fall for sure, and ultimately, that's again another base going down for Clem here. He is starting to hurt for cash as those bases on the top side are starting to mine out, and Maru, he has pretty much both these rich Vespian geyser bases on lockdown.
Well, and Clem really doesn't need that much cash right now. He's having a difficult time spending it down as it is. But I'm finding it difficult for Clem to stay in this game the way that he is trading out. Maru already has had a very strong worker advantage for at least the good past 8-9 minutes of this game. And as Clem trades more inefficiently, he's not able to remax as quickly as his opponent. So look at those supplies right now, 197 to 166. Clem's continuing to shove on forward, but Maru's going to continue throwing more and more units at him. The army count now swinging a little bit in his favor.
Yeah, for sure. And you have to wonder, how do you deal with this with just the Vikings and the Liberators? Do you need to be more aggressive to stay on top of those Ravens? Well, then the Marines will just get you, right? It's just a very rough army composition. Okay, this is one way he may be able to win it if those Ravens are not there in time, but ultimately they do still arrive. And manage to clutch it out right there, taking down more siege tanks. There are still more siege tanks though waiting for Maru. He does keep pushing forward on that location. Gets a little bit surprised right there, I suppose, and takes a bit of a beating on his Marine count. Only 4 of them remain, but I'm fairly certain that will be replenished rather quicker than later.
Maru's been doing a really nice job of spending down, though, so it's not like he has a giant bank to lean on right now. Those Ravens are very, very important for him to keep around. He's down to 7, which seems funny to say, but he needs those that Raven count to stay high. So getting back into double digits will be helpful for him, especially with that Corvid reactor upgrade, being able to get that energy spiked as quickly as it possibly can. And now Clem just trying to replenish his core army composition here, just getting more of those Marines, more of those tanks, trying to find a way to keep that air balance going in his favor. But once again, those losses almost dead even again. Kozan, this is a great game. This is kind of what we were hoping we would see.
Yeah, this is one of the best TvTs I've ever seen, pretty much right now. It's a very fascinating one as well, because we have these two clashing styles, right? Which is going to turn out to be a little bit more superior between these two? And is it going to come down to micro, or is it going to come down to just the unit composition working out in their favor right now? It is fascinating to see this mass liberator style going against the more Raven orientated style, and overall, I mean, they are still going head to head at the moment. Here we go, another base falls for, I believe, both of these players. As long as the Liberators and the Siege tanks there will be able to repay Maru in kind on this side. It's taking them a little bit longer, though, with the sieging up and the sieging down. So Maru actually taking down 2 bases, as Clem is still working on that 1 base right there on what is it, the 2 o'clock location. Oh my god, look at that, just above it. Maru's taking another base from Clem.
The problem, though, is that Maru's got a really good defense on his bases. He's got planetary fortresses going in his favor. Now, Clem has lost 2 of his orbitals, and the tanks just continue to get shut down here, and that's going to continue to be the case here. In fact, he's just going to jump right on top of those, and now suddenly Maru taking a look right at the natural, saying, I think I've got your production under wraps here. You don't have a whole lot to stop me, because the rest of your army is currently trying to trail back, and that Raven count is still so high. There is not a lot that Clem can do here. He's kind of caught out in the map, just a little confused. What do I do?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to do for him. I mean, going for a base raid will not go favorably for him. Looking at all the bases that are available for Maru, he's never going to be able to take that down. He's going to have to try and catch this army and then somehow get himself across the field without allowing Maru to spill on over towards the other side again. So it's going to have to be a very efficient trade, and ultimately Maru is avoiding that situation entirely here, going for the drop into the main base further. And behind this, of course, I mean, he's slowly trading this army out. Back at home, we already see the next blob of units for Maru assembling, getting together, and starting to bulk up right there.
Maru's done enough damage here. He's starting to lose some of those Ravens once again, but he is able to replenish them. But look at the worker counts, Kozan, 63 to 16. Clem is now starting to look at the last remnants of the armies that he can have in this game, just simply because he's got no gas income. He has no mineral income, and now getting stuck with another anti-armor missile. This just goes from bad to insanely worse.
Yeah, and Maru does have a lower army supply overall, but his army supply, the army supply of Clem is mostly in these Vikings, and they don't trade favorably against the Marines, which is one of the main army composition pieces right now for Maru, right? 45 Marines at that moment in time right there. And you need the siege tanks against this, but still with 6 Ravens, Maru time and time again proving that he is capable of landing those interference matrices regardless of how many Vikings are in the sky, and that is incredibly impressive from this Korean Terran right here.
I was a little surprised that Clem didn't transition into Ravens once he realized, like, hey, I'm actually not getting that much value out of my Vikings. I mean, he needs to have them, but he's not killing the core composition of what Maru is really engaging with here. So unfortunately, Clem is more than likely kind of on the ropes here. He can't afford to lose this base. Gonna try and siege up and pick off these Marines, but it comes at the cost of 18 more workers. He's down to 3 workers and a dream.
Oh boy. Yeah, this army is all that stands in between Maru and utter domination right now. He is looking pretty darn sharp, trying to just clean the floor with a couple more siege tanks, and I think that should be it, right? Losing these siege tanks, that is absolutely abysmal. He's left with like 4 siege tanks, and more of them will go down here, I do believe. Yep. So that's 2 siege tanks. That's 2 siege tanks. And one of them is on 1 HP. 2 of them actually. All right. Yeah, that's got to be it. That has got to be it. I'm not sure if Clem immediately will tap out. He's not quite certain how much Maru still has, of course. We're a little bit fortunate having the omnipotent vision here, but I don't think we're too far away removed anymore. There's not much Clem can do, guys. He's just out of mining. He doesn't have the income. He has no way to replenish these forces. All he has is a big ball of Vikings, and I mean, 24 Vikings, they don't do well against like 60 Marines. Yeah, especially with anti-armor missile.
Yeah, but you don't tap out early in the semifinals of a major event, right? You want to try and give everything your all, because again, like you said, maybe you're misreading the situation, but this giant ball of Marines should seal the deal. GG is called. Maru with a 2-1 victory, a nice 29-minute game. We got some good, solid TvT.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a very sick match, honestly. That was, like I said, one of the cooler TvTs I've seen. If not one of the coolest overall. Very, very interesting stuff happening there. Multiple things that are very noteworthy overall. Just seeing the army compositions, why Clem wouldn't try to make a transition himself, seeing how difficult it was overall, seeing how Maru utilizing the fact that he didn't have those slow sieging units, right? Wasn't making use of the siege tank, wasn't making use of the Liberator, so he was more free to just roam roam over the map continuously, go wherever Clem was weakest, and shut down so many bases, and ultimately crippling Clem to a point where he just wasn't able to compete anymore.
Well, I think the big question that Clem has to answer is, how can I deal with the Ravens of Maru? Because those Ravens were the primary source of damage in most cases. If anything, just completely shutting down Clem's army so Maru's Marines can come in and overrun just about everything. So he's got to find a way to deal with that. I think that's the biggest question that he has to answer here in game number 4. We're going to be going on to Submarine. We might not see as long of a game here in game number 4, Kozan. What do you anticipate that we're going to see here out of our players on the shorter map?
It is rough to see. Rough to say. Sorry, I'm not completely certain. These guys, we might see another one of those, little bit of a slugfest, right? It's a smaller map though overall, so perhaps it's going to be easier for Clem to utilize his style with the siege tanks. He has less ways to be pulled apart from. So maybe it's going to work out a little bit better for him overall. But the base is still fairly spread out here. It's gonna be a rough one if he does try to go for that style again. Maru looks very, very comfortable with just kind of sticking to his own army composition, and yeah, I don't know. You know, saying Clem should just switch it up and make his own Ravens, try to go for that same style. That is such a rough decision to make, because I mean, to suddenly just be like, all right, well, what you're doing is pretty darn good. Let me do that also, and then beat you with your own style. I don't know. I don't know if it works like that. You know, this is something that Maru has been practicing a lot, and then you just kind of start to copy it, and suddenly you're going to outperform Maru with his own stuff. I don't know.
Well, we are going to jump to a very, very brief break here. One of our players taking a bathroom break, and we're going to do the same. We'll be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. Game number 4 incoming in just a moment. All right, folks, welcome back. Thank you so much for being patient with us. Our players are back and ready to go, and this game is just about to boot up. We have Maru currently up 2-1 in this best of 7, so no match point just yet, but Clem has to be very careful that he does not let his opponent slip away from him. It's starting to possibly look as if maybe Clem was going to take one quick game off the top, and Maru's not going to let him back in. But we'll have to see if that ends up being the case. We're jumping into Submarine for our map number 4. Spawning into the bottom right. Our blue Terran player playing from France and Team Liquid. This is Clem.
And his opponents, you know what, looking absolutely lovely in this matchup so far. He's the red Terran in the top left side, the Jin Green Wings, Maru.
So Submarine being a smaller map here, you had an opportunity to say that you didn't think that there would be a whole lot of major change here just because of the way the bases are spread out, essentially.
Yeah, especially the sixth base, right? That's a difficult one to take. You still can rotate on the top to the bottom, and it's still going to be quite a drag for overall siege tanks and liberators to try and catch up. So I think if we do see a similar situation, I don't think it's going to be too disadvantageous here for Maru because of the map size. Maybe it's going to be a little bit easier for Clem to do, but ultimately I think it should still work out okay.
Well, both players going into that early second gas, so we might. I mean, we can obviously see both. In a TvT, it's kind of hard to tell, right? The double gas could be very aggressive, but it also could just be, well, I want to make sure that I'm ready for my opponent if they show up with something funky. So it's hard to tell immediately off the bat if this is going to be super aggressive or defensive by either player, but I still firmly feel confident that Clem is going to be the one that needs to keep that pressure up early. I mean, he showed it in game number 1. He was able to drop right into the natural and go, hey, hello, here's all my stuff, and oops, you lose the game. But I think Maru's going to not make it easy for Clem here in game number 4, or in any future games as well, to get that kind of aggression out early. He doesn't want to fall for that again.
Yeah, I mean, it is a potential way for Clem to gain that early lead, though, right? And that is just pretty magnificent to be able to do, of course. And maybe even if you do manage to keep that aggression going, eke out a very early victory, because in TvT, it is so hectic. Things can spiral out of control just because you lose one single unit, especially in this early game. And ultimately, that can mean a loss. Losing that first SCV here, already a nice little pick off there by Clem, right? Manages to secure himself the tiniest of leads that you possibly could get at the earlier parts of the game here.
Well, and that's the shorter map, kind of playing into Clem's favor. He's able to get that Reaper over, provide a little bit of harassment. Maru's Reaper actually over on the top side of the map, not able to help defend. So yeah, those little advancements do make a big difference, especially in, again, a matchup of numbers where everything is evened out, and if you can get just a little bit of an advantage over your opponent in the early game, it will immediately snowball down the rest of the way if you can continue to expand on that. So good for Clem, good start, but he's got to be able to hold off this aggression that's coming here from Maru.
Yeah, it should be fairly doable. There's only a single... Oh, wait, he is actually supply blocked here a little bit as well, but the 2 Marines come out and we'll be able to shut this down. Not to a horrendous trade there for either of these players. Maru just kind of moving back, being like, all right, well, we'll try something else later on. It's Clem, you know what, being able to sweep away the sweat off his forehead, realizing, all right, well, that went good. We're going to be able to continue forwards as well.
Okay, here comes that pressure. Clem going to try and keep the pedal to the metal here, but a good Cyclone will be able to help zone out the medevac. The Hellions are going to come in right away, but one immediately gets tossed down, so this is going to make this push just a little less strong for Clem. And it's very good positioning here by Maru, who's going to continue whittling away at these Marines. Look at that pickup micro. Very, very quick by Clem. That tank is not able to get sieged up where it wants to, though, because of that Cyclone. And it's just a lot of really good micro. Again, Maru playing with that army deficit, but still making it work out in his favor.
Yeah, and it looks like he has bought himself enough time. Now there's the siege tank here. We'll be able to send the Cyclone up into the main base in case there is a medevac drop. Or, you know what, he may want to stick around here for a little bit longer. Using it as a scouting tool for the time being. Clem getting a little bit tired of it. It looks like we'll set up a siege tank, being like, all right, well, you tried to come close now, sir. But unfortunately for Clem, now the role of that the Cyclone is being taken over by the Raven as the scouting tool.
Well, and the Raven has got to be something that gets Clem scared. It's like, oh man, Maru's really good with his Ravens, and if he's got one, he's gonna have another one as a second one does come on out. But now this has been posturing here for those tanks to try and get an advantageous position on the low ground, and now they will be able to siege on to the production of that starport. But again, those Ravens able to make the most of their auto turrets, trying to get on top of the tank damage and buying himself a little bit of time to get those Vikings out. But some good high ground vision from Clem's own Raven here, going to shut down that reactor. Oh, no, not quite. The reactor's going to be able to survive. More than likely will get repaired.
Ooh, okay, manages to keep that siege tank alive also. Very clutch saves here overall from both these players. Keeping the reactor alive is a big deal, of course, and Clem keeping the siege tank alive, a similar big deal. A reactor going down would mean immediately that Clem very likely to get that Raven advantage, or the Viking advantage here. But so far, it's looking okay for both of them, managing to stabilize a little bit again. But my dear lord, this is so stressful to watch, you know, because one wrong move can start that spiral and suddenly give a player such a significant advantage with some sort of a positioning or something of a engagement, right? Getting enough siege tanks down, all of a sudden he's going to be able to get an even better positioning, and that's the nice part of about being the aggressor right now, right? And that is what Clem is doing. He's out and about on the map, although where he's positioned right now, it frightens me a little bit, because he is not able to really see what Maru is doing. And he's not really shutting anything down. It was more so like a army position, hoping that he will catch Maru off guard, sending his units across the field, and suddenly taking 3 siege tank shots to the face, right?
Well, yeah, to your point, I feel Clem wasn't actually being that aggressive because he wasn't actually doing anything. And you're absolutely right. Yep. I think just kind of hoping and praying that he might get a good drop on a moving army. But this is a little bit better engagement here for Clem, actually getting a good tank position, using Ravens of his own, finding answers to Maru's Ravens as well. And now these tanks will be able to come up and pressure this third base. The tank count now weighing in Clem's favor. And the Vikings trying their best to get that positioning as cleanly as they can, but the orbital command is getting dangerously low. Workers have to get pulled off of the mineral line to repair, and now this is kind of an awkward position here for Maru. He doesn't have a real good way to get on top of the tanks of Clem, and Clem going to try and rotate a little bit, but now that's going to allow Maru to re-secure his third base as Clem tries to rotate up to the natural.
Yeah, that is quite a move right here. He's going to attempt it. Will be able to, oh my dear lord, gets that siege tank right there on the ramp area, tries to get the other siege tanks as well, and the other ramp has his siege tanks in an alright position, but ultimately getting 6 Marines right there. That was a scary move, man. That was a daring one. Leaving a couple of those siege tanks behind for a while. Now the Marines, actually, this is the scary part about leaving your siege tanks undefended, right? Suddenly you stim forwards and your siege tanks are a goner, and just like that, Clem getting such a marvelous trade and immediately just being punished for trying to escape that area. And Maru just staying on the ball, immediately capitalizing on the fact that Clem was trying to move out of that situation, and kind of equalizes it out again, right? The work count looking good now. Maru's also got the +1/+1, by the way. That is also quite the significant thing we haven't mentioned just quite yet, as the +1/+1 for Clem only halfway done right about now.
Clem. You got that great engagement, and then unfortunately let Maru claw back in. The units lost tab showing that Clem has a slight disadvantage on the units lost, and mostly because he tossed away 6 tanks for almost nothing. Trading Marines out for tanks, Maru will do that day in and day out. Now he's going to be able to post up at the 4th base location. The natural is going to be able to be sieged up, and this is starting to look a little dicey here for Clem. Again, now he's in the position where it's difficult for him to try and engage on this army, but Maru doesn't want to overextend. He's going to pick off the gas, and he's going to say, well, it's enough for me for now. I'm just going to take my slight victory and just re-rotate around the map, knowing that that 3rd base has got to be feeling vulnerable, and that's really where Maru wants to get his attention focused, right as his 4th base is just about to complete and float out onto site.
Yeah, it's gonna stretch both these players a little bit more thin, right? Going across 4 bases instead of just the 3. A lot more scans will have to be utilized there to try and keep tabs on what your opponent is doing. The sensor tower here, unfortunately, just barely in range of that siege tank, so the free intel for in a way not going to be available anymore for Clem right there. It's gonna have to invest the scans in that area. Also now send those Marines out to scout continuously. This is an interesting move as well, getting those siege tanks a little bit sieged up, trying to catch Clem out of position as he's trying to make the transition towards that 4th base. It's quite heavily under fire. Liberated, drawing the attention for Maru away though, so slowing this down quite a bit. That is very significant also. And this is the real deal though, isn't it? Where will Maru go next? It's on Clem's mind. This is what he needs to keep attention to, and this is what he needs to try and figure out. If he doesn't, that could mean the end of either his 4th or his 3rd base. Continuously moving back and forth. The siege tank position here very well placed as well by Maru. As Clem tries to move back and forth between these places, continuously these siege tanks will be able to take pot shots at the Marine counts. Right, here we go. A couple of siege tanks a little bit on their lonesome. There's so many siege tanks available for Maru. Clem trying to commit here with the SCPs and the Marines. I don't think he has enough, or he's gonna take one hell of a punishment here, at least to try and clean this up. Realizes a bit too late as well how many siege tanks are actually available there for Maru, and suddenly this could be some very, very prime real estate available for Maru to start shooting at that 3rd base with still a reasonable amount of Marines. More siege tanks coming across the field as well.
Yeah, this is a rough situation here for Clem. I mean, Maru's just gonna anchor this down, and suddenly we see a Maru on match point. GG is called. I think that first game might have been a little bit of a fluke for our European Terran. I mean, he's got an opportunity to try and wrestle this back, but he's got quite the mountain to overcome here. I think all of his tricks are not as effective here against Maru, who is now starting to read his opponent and knows that the longer that game can go on, it always starts to tip in his favor. And we'll have to see where we go for game number 5. It is going to be on Pillars of Gold. Should it be a nice map to expand upon? We could possibly see ourselves going into a nice longer series once again. Sorry, my brain kind of ground to a halt for just a brief second there. But talk to me, Kozan. What's the keys to success here for Clem? His decision making has been pretty strong so far. Where does he go from here?
It looks like he's been able to get himself in a good position at the 3rd base of Maru a couple of times now, right? It looks like he's in a good position, and then I don't know if he doesn't quite know how to follow it up. He doesn't quite know how to, or if he even should reinforce that location. He doesn't quite seem to be comfortable with how he is supposed to follow it up, where else he's supposed to go, and that is where Maru's decision making just really shines. I think that is where Clem needs to figure it out. Just, you know what, not getting those siege tanks picked off as he's moving back across the field, that type of stuff. Anyway, in the bottom left side, here he is, the blue Terran on his last legs, needs to win 3 games in a row. It's the Frenchman from Team Liquid. He is Clem.
And spawning in the top right, our red Terran player for Janair Green Wings on match point. This is Maru. So I was anticipating maybe seeing some early movement out on the map, but both players just gonna try and slug this out as normally as they possibly can. But I'm still trying to find in my head where Clem goes to try and secure a second win in this series. Of course, the very beginning, if you didn't get a chance to see game number 1, Clem won it off of the back of getting a really nice timing on the delay in the natural, and then was able to just continue to expound on that but pressure by bringing more and more, getting a good tank siege, and then finally just overwhelming Maru in his own base while defending back at home. And on a large map like Pillars of Gold, I find that this is going to be a tall order for Clem to try and win, at least in that style, because his Reapers aren't going to be able to get across the map as fast as he'd like them to, comparatively to a map like Oxide or Lightshade. He's going to have a lot more main base to play with as well, so Maru's going to be able to spread out just a little bit more and not get choked up on his own production. And I just think Maru's going to be wise to it, Kozan. I don't feel like Clem's going to be able to drop a surprise in Maru's lap here at game number 5.
Yeah, it's you know what, you can hope a little bit here, but it could be very rough. It looks like Maru is trying to just kind of delay that command center being thrown down. Ultimately, it is already in the main base for Clem, so it looks like it will be okay. And Maru back at home, going for the quicker factory at the moment, right? So perhaps he's misreading the situation. Perhaps he's thinking, all right, well, it looks like Clem also going for the factory here, when in fact it is that command center in the main base. Needs to get the scout off, and it looks like he just might, as the defensive force for Clem here, first and foremost defending the natural instead of the Reaper jump area. It's a little bit of a 50-50. Where does Maru go? Okay, does go into the front side. Now does Clem rotate towards that jump pad, or will Maru even attempt? Okay, it doesn't, so he's going to move backwards, keep the Reaper numbers alive and healthy. Suppose he already sees that bunker, right? So can kind of infer from that, all right, he is going for the expansion as well.
Yeah, it's going to be continued pressure here for Maru, trying to get up there with the Reaper. One Reaper getting dangerously low, but does not quite fall. So Clem going to deny a little bit of that scouting and extended harassment. Both players going to get out to their natural expands as well. But I keep watching and waiting. Where is the early path going to take us for both players? Right now, holding really tight army-wise. Nobody's cutting workers super early just yet. Maru just building his second base out on site as well, but trying to stay mobile with that Reaper count, getting a third gas as well. So both players taking that third gas relatively quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering if Clem is going to be able to just maybe mix up his style entirely. I don't know if it's even a good idea. Seeing Maru's composition, right? I don't think against the Mass Raven there's a lot of chance to go mech either, in a sense, right? I mean, the Ravens just seem like they will be able to take care of it. The best I can come up with is just having Marines to kind of zone them out, having those Vikings to zone them out. And yeah, it's just coming down to this weird balance act, right? Where you need to have the Marines and the siege tanks and the Vikings, and then just be aware of the Ravens, have your composition be correct, so you can zone out the Marines of Maru as well. And yeah, it's a rough one. Anyway, we have a bit of a drop going on right now. The Widowmine does get burrowed and unburrowed, so okay, does get picked up for now. And Clem's still losing a reasonable chunk of SCVs, but it's not too bad overall.
They're trading out the 5 workers for the entire medevac full of units for Maru is at least a wash. If it's anything, he could have lost a lot more. The mine was never allowed to get the damage done that it needed to. So Clem should feel empowered here to try and move out, to do a little bit of counter pressure. And it seems as if that's exactly what's going to be the case here. But right now, units going to be piled up here for Maru. He's got an okay count. I mean, 26 to 17, it's at least a bit of a disadvantage here for Maru. He's got 1 tank and a Raven, though. So I think he should be relatively okay since everything's already posted up and he can spot for that tank immediately.
Yeah, well, the main base still a little bit exposed, of course. There's a nice position for the siege tank also to go, but Clem not taking the risk will move backwards here. His army supply is looking very sharp, though, so I mean, one single good interference matrix here will be able to facilitate a nice way into the location of the natural base. Okay, repositioning right now, getting himself on that refinery. That on its own is already going to force Maru into somewhat of a response right here, as he will not enjoy not having the oh my dear, is he going to get a siege tank? Well, gets it a little bit low. more of a response required for Maru right now. But yeah, we've seen actually, of course, that Clem is very much capable of taking Maru toe-to-toe in the micro game. It's just the overall grand scheme of things later on where things kind of fall apart with the positioning and such. So maybe this is the best way for him to take it, right? Try to just get himself into a good position with the micro. Okay, here we go. The siege tanks for Maru actually in a lot of trouble. They all do get taken out. The Ravens trying their best to clean the floor as well with the auto turrets, but it looks like it's pretty darn good here for Clem. Will move himself further forwards.
Yeah, he should be able to rotate the army on the low ground here to get up, and now we're going to see those tanks continue to get into the ramp, but he's still got 3 tanks. Maru's in a really rough spot here. This is looking a little bit identical to game number 1, where this is exactly what Clem needed to do to slow down his opponent. If you're going to build a bunch of Ravens and beat me with them, fine. I'm never going to let you build Ravens. And now the natural base has to get evacuated here. He's already lost 13 workers. 1 tank at the top of the ramp is not going to be enough to deal with this, as the Liberator is going to rotate on forward. The Viking count gets cleared up. That 1 Raven is not going to do it. And Clem securing a game 2 win. Very, very excited here. Maru has to squeak out 1 more game if he wants to take it all.
All right, let's go. That was absolutely fantastic. Clem being able to take another game right there in the early parts of the match overall, and Maru doesn't seem too bothered by it though, right? He still seems relaxed. He still seems like he's keeping his composure, not too bothered. But yeah, Clem. That was a fantastic maneuver going around the side towards that refinery and forcing that overall response from Maru. It's impossible for him to continue that forward without that refinery being available and without even the potential to just use that that front door, right? That ramp also in a position where it will get sieged, where if anything that tries to move down, it's going to get shot at, and ultimately very, very well played there by Clem. Gets himself into a good position and gets himself a little bit closer to a potential tied-up series once more.
Oh, if we take this to a game number 7, Kozan, I think that would just be bonkers at this point. But certainly Clem is showing that he's got the capability to do so. We're going to Jugannatha, or... yeah, I'm sticking with that one. I think that one's going to be, if anything, I'm going to create my own narrative here, and everyone's going to be like at the DreamHack cast next week. Hey, wait, we heard those casters at King of Battles. This is how they pronounced it. I'm putting my stake in the ground. StarCraft, putting my stake in the ground here. Jugannatha is going to be here
about it. They were talking about it in the Pylon show as well. I don't know if you saw that.
Ooh, okay. I did miss that. What did you catch?
They pronounce it as Juggernaut. Pretty much like it's Juggernaut, but it's where it's derived from, right? But
okay.
It's almost like Juggernaut, pretty much. Anyway, guys, we have another game here. Will he be able to tie up the series? He's the Team Liquid's Frenchman, the Blue Terran. He is Clem.
And on the verge of match point, still trying to hold on to this series. Our red Terran from Jyn Air Greenwings. This is Maru. Can't believe you'd out me like that for missing this week's Pylon show. How dare you, Kozan? How dare you?
It's only been released on YouTube like yesterday, and you know, especially for us Europeans, it's impossible to catch live anyway. So you know what?
Oh, that's fair.
I don't think a lot of people are too bothered with watching it live continuously. It's all fine, man. It's all fine. The VOD squad is there.
I actually, so I might be, well, maybe I'm not that unusual, but I usually use the podcast because I've got a bit of a commute to work, and I'll listen to little chunks of it, and that's how I enjoy, because I can imagine all of their faces and all of their funny bantering while I'm driving, but a little bit more convenient for me to do it that way. Where's my podcast people at? They gotta be there.
I can get behind that as well. I just like the overall facial expressions of Artosis. They are just magnificent. He always has such an expressionatory face in a way, you know, and it's a joy to watch him do his thing in a sense.
Oh, you want classic Artosis faces. I mean, watching him ladder on Brood War is just is just so good. Like sometimes I feel like, oh man, I got a little salty after losing that game. Shoot, I got to work on that. You go and watch an Artosis stream though, and I'm like, you know what? I'm okay. I'm doing pretty good here.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that is, I could get a little bit salty myself as well. I'll admit it. Especially on the ladder sometimes, you know, it does get rather feisty sometimes. You only have yourself to blame, and, well, ultimately, that is, it's a weird place to be, you know, after playing a lot of team games and such. But anyway. What are they doing? What are they up to?
Well,
just some regular stuff again, aren't they? Just very remarkable, similar builds. And
yeah, but it's late command centers for both players, though. Both of them dropping them down just a second ago. And I think we're going to see a little bit of that back and forth play with the Reapers and the Hellions as they both sense, wait, I have an opportunity to try and to snipe these off and delay. Maru has got to start thinking as well, okay, Clem's taken 2 games off of me because I let him get into an advantageous position and jump on top of my economy. So I'm going to be curious to watch his production tab to see how he can protect back at home. And he's already moving in that direction. He's getting that Widow Mine out to help protect the front door, even just a little bit more.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too upset about it either. But then again, I mean, to be fair, I would like to see Clem take it to the finals match, you know, make it a close one, get himself in a position where he can take the series, actually. But, oh no, that Widow Mine actually being hidden by the Hellions there for a lot longer than it was happening the previous time. Clem not seeing it and having to run across the field now till between his legs. That was a little bit of a feisty one. Maru moving away from it as well, so he doesn't take the damage either. And yeah, 2 Reapers just like that, gone. And they won't be coming back.
Yeah, again, Maru, again, thinking through, okay, what kills me here? What hurts my chances of winning? And immediately knowing that a mine could do the job, and it absolutely does, taking off those Reapers, forcing Clem back. Now Clem has to sit here and go, okay, I don't do very well if I get past this point in the series right now. How can I follow up? And he's got his Ravens. I love the Raven production here. He is trying to match Maru Raven for Raven. We'll have to see if he can maneuver his Ravens the same way as Maru. But Maru already taking a slight army lead as he tries to jump forward. Yeah,
and that is what he kind of needs to, right? I mean, every time it's been going sideways for him, it's been in that earlier part, and it's been because Clem is going more aggressively with his siege tank production. He kind of skips the Cyclone overall. So potentially, if we do still manage to get to a game number 7, that could be a way for Maru to perhaps punish Clem by going for the more aggressive route, whether it be with a medevac drop, whether it be with a Banshee or anything of that kind. Clem will not have that much anti-air, so we're seeing him continuously just kind of not going for the Cyclones anymore.
It was a brutal way for that Reaper to go.
That didn't seem like it was on purpose, but that was remarkably well placed to suddenly be Widow Mined there.
What a way to go. All right, Maru.
That's on my mind.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you just hear that click and you're like, uh-oh.
Oh, well, all right.
So, getting into that stim pack upgrade here early for Maru. Maru's going to be the one that wants to put on the pressure. We're noticing that Clem is, it feels like he's, I mean, I hate to say he's slowing down. I like this good medevac pathing here for Maru to try and catch something moving across. But it feels like Clem is slowing down just a little bit, but he does have an army lead, at least at this point. I'm not exactly sure where this is going to head, but it does look like Maru's positioning to move out. And it looks like both of them are going to go meet each other on the map. Clem has a pretty decent tank count, but it's going to be upgrades that come in for Maru. So if Clem can't secure a good engagement here at the center of the map, Maru is going to start leaping ahead of his opponent, who is currently not getting any upgrades at this time.
Yeah, Clem once more trying to put himself in a beneficial position here. Try to take the trade across the field. He I don't see a third base for him either on the production right now. Oh, sneaky Widowmine there, being able to catch a Viking of guard, so gets hit a little bit here. Maru so far already in a good position though against this. Will Clem try to commit here? Is Siege Tank still steam a little bit far away to really make a committal here, but Maru respecting this maneuver and only saves one of his Siege Tanks. So overall, it looks like Clem once again getting quite a dangerous position here for Maru to deal with, and once again, he's gonna have to respect it. He's gonna have to respond, and the response that he does right now is the one that I like the most. Just gonna try to avoid the fight for as long as possible, but all right, with even that interference matrix right here, that's so many siege tanks right now for Clem. The auto turrets were thrown down, but ultimately pretty much everything on the ground here for Maru gets destroyed. It's vanquished right now. The Viking count full. Maru does reign supreme though, so maybe that on its own will be able to force these siege tanks backwards. Ultimately, Clem, I mean, he killed off a lot of those SCVs, but I mean, without his upgrades going, without him having that third base already established, it's still not a great place for him to be.
This is kind of a rough spot for, I guess I feel Clem. I think Clem wasn't two base all-inning on that because he's got his third base out on site and he's going to be able to transition. But I think he was hoping to get a little bit more economic damage, at least killing off some SCVs. But instead, Maru's just going to rotate down to that bottom third. He's going to be in a position where he can get his tanks sieged up and in the right spot. And now it's a good spot for Maru to continue defending, as I think Clem feels very, very strong about staying on top of what's happening in this particular map. So now we're in a spot where, gosh, Clem really has to make something happen here.
Yeah, he really needs to, right? I mean, you mentioned it's not an all-in, but I mean, it is very, very close to being one in a sense. He's still not going for the upgrades here. Yes, he is getting himself the ultimately the third base, so he's going to be able to keep up with the production a little bit better, perhaps, but it's not the greatest fight. The siege tanks are not quite in siege position just yet as it starts off, and now losing this army as well. I think we're very close to the end here for Clem. GG, good luck is called, and Maru takes it all. We'll be able to claim a victory here in this best of 7 in a fairly clean manner. Every time it went to a macro game,